Recording in progress. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Milton Board of Zoning Appeals for October 18th, 2022 to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 3 on our agenda is introduction of board members, starting from my left.
My name is Laura Bentley.
Adam Danella,
Hodge Patel,
Don Kurt.
David Jackson, Zach Stafford.
Item 4 on our agenda is to approve or amend the agenda as published by the City of Milton. I'll open the floor for a motion.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
We've got a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting as published by Laura Bentley with a second by Adam Danella. Is there any discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor of approving the agenda as published, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. The motion passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda, item 5, is approval of the meeting minutes from September 20th as published by the City of Milton. I'll open the floor for a motion and a second.
Chairman,
Motion to approve the September 20th, 2022 meeting minutes as published.
second.
We've got a motion by Adam and a second by Laura Bentley to approve the September 20th, 2022 meeting minutes as published by the City of Milton. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The motion passes unanimously. Item 6 on our agenda is consideration of primary variances. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-judicial board comprised of resident volunteers of the City of Milton. The board is charged with hearing requests for variances from the standards of zoning ordinance and appeals of administrative determination. With regard to the decisions on the primary variances, the board's basis for decisions is provided by these 4 considerations. A, relief if granted would not offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance, and B, there are such extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions pertaining to a particular piece of property that the literal or strict application of the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship due to size, shape, or topography, or other extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions not caused by the variance applicant. And C, relief, if granted, would not cause substantial detriment to the public good and surrounding properties. And D, public safety, health, and welfare are secured and that substantial justice is done. The first primary variance this evening is V22-201135 Nix Road. Will staff please present?
Good evening, board members.
Good evening.
Hello.
The property address is 1135 Nix Road, and the applicant is seeking the following variance: to allow a proposed barn to encroach into the 100-foot building setback for housing animals by 40 feet. The site is a 3.292 acre parcel located on the north side of Nix Road. The property is zoned AG1 and located in the rural Milton overlay district. Applicable setbacks for lot are 60-foot front, 50-foot rear, and 25-foot side. The 100-foot building setback is required for a barn housing animals as per section 64, 4 and 5, 4A. The applicant is requesting to allow the proposed barn to encroach into the 100-foot building setback for housing animals for 40 feet. Therefore, this variance is requested. In April 2022, the homeowner applied for a residential building permit to community development for a proposed barn structure, which revealed the non-conforming barn location as shown in Exhibit A. It was also brought to staff's attention that the applicant had proceeded with a quick claim deed through Fulton County with a parcel to the east, 0 Nix Road, to combine this parcel with the existing 1135 Nix Road parcel. The applicant is currently moving forward with a minor plat to combine the two parcels officially through the community development minor plat process. The property at 1135 Nix Road is 3.29 acres, and 0 Nix Road is 1.093 acres, respectively, for a total size of 4.385 acres, as shown in Exhibit B. The address after the combination of both parcels will remain 1135 Nix Road. The proposed barn location is only seeking a variance for the existing 1135 Nix Road property. Therefore, staff was amenable to move forward with the variance request. The lot frontage for 1135 Nix Road is 220 feet, with a depth of 794 feet. This creates a long and narrow lot. In fact, the farther back you go on the lot, the increase in the narrowness, and in fact, the rear property line has a width of 145 feet. The proposed barn dimensions are 30 feet by 24 feet, and based off the proposed barn dimensions, a variance would be required regardless of where the barn was positioned on the property. The barn will be 60 feet from the western property, which is a 40 feet encroachment. The applicant also detailed in their letter of appeals the barn location was chosen for the least amount of disturbance of tree removal. The adjacent neighbor support map is shown in Exhibit C. Support from 1130 Nix Road to the west, 0 Birmingham Road to the north, and I want to say on record, I received a call from the neighbor to the east, 1150 Nix Road, and she wanted to confirm that the encroachment was on the other side and not towards her. And at this moment, we have received no support or objection from that neighbor. Letters of support are provided in Exhibit D. Elevations of the barn are provided in Exhibit E. Photos of the property are detailed in Exhibit F. The DRB met on October 4th and had the following comments. DRB recommends approval of this variance request and the barn to be built to match the elevations in the packet and be a natural wood roof color and brown stained siding. If approved, staff recommends the following condition. Per the site plan from Solar Land Survey and received on September 16th, 2022 by Community Development Department, and also to provide a foundation survey during the permitting process of the barn structure. Any questions for staff?
Can you point out the location of the primary and secondary septic fields?
We weren't given that information, but I can
Okay, the
have the
applicant
applicant
can
provide
probably-
that.
okay.
Yes.
And can you point out the specific location on the site plan of where the barn is in relation to the setback as well as the home?
Right. So here is the existing home, and it's a distance of 129 feet to the barn structure. And the barn structure is 60 feet to the western property, and then 102 feet from the quitclaim deed that they're combining. And after they combine the parcel to be one, it'll have 134.6 feet. So in essence, it's increasing the distance after they combine the parcels. And we wanted to make sure they met the 100 feet distance on the eastern side before we took them through the process.
And when you visited the property, can you talk to us a little bit about the elevation of the overall site as well as the area where the barn is proposed? Is it more of a flat area that they've proposed it in versus another area on the property?
Yeah, so this is to the east towards the neighbor that gave me a call. Her house is pretty well screened from walking the site. And this is to the north, just a view from the house to the backyard. And it is a gradual increase, but you can tell it increases in depth the farther back you go. And this is one of the examples of the trees they wanted to save. And here is a view to the west where the barn is to be located. And it looks like it's a little flatter, the barn site that they're proposing to build, which doesn't have any trees to be knocked down.
So the applicant's proposed location for this barn is, are you suggesting that's the best location overall on the site because of a minimal disturbance to the trees on the
I
site?
would agree that the place they chose did not have any trees and it was flat.
Okay.
So if you move, I mean, obviously, no matter where you move it, there's going to need to be a variance. But if you were to move it over 34 feet towards the chicken coop, do you know what that, I mean, do you know what's there? Because then it would be 100 feet and, let's say, I forget how far across it is, but
Yeah, that was our thinking too. After you combine the lots, it's doable, but just from the lot before combined, that was our take because it's not officially combined yet.
If they weren't going to house animals, what's the setback need to be?
It would just be primary setbacks.
Got it.
So 50?
Yeah, 25-foot side, 50 rear, and 60 front.
And the 100-foot for barns housing animals, when was that implemented? Do you recall? It's
It
been
was
recent.
It was from the Fulton County. It has been there since we became a city, or even before the city.
100 feet?
Yeah, 100
Okay.
feet, yep.
I have a question. To me, anyway, this is sort of the first time a hardship has been claimed in my mind about taking trees down. And we don't have anything from the arborist that says would be a violation of the canopy rules or something, do we? I mean, I don't know how that fits in because the arborist has their own rules, right, on what the canopy coverage has to be. If the homeowner says, it's a hardship to me, I don't want to take those trees down, but in fact, it doesn't violate the amount of tree coverage that the arborist would expect, I don't know how we can rule on that hardship. You know what I'm saying? We don't generally have an arborist ruling before we come into these hearings. So this is the first case I've seen that we've had a question of a hardship about taking a tree down.
well, in the current location, are there, the way I heard it was if it's here, there's not any trees.
Right,
But if it's moved, there would be trees.
right,
Right?
right.
But obviously, we don't have anything that shows where the trees are.
Right. Okay, I just bring it up because
Yeah.
we don't have an arborist opinion coming in as to what, it just seems different to me. We haven't had this before, in my mind.
Right, we were quoting the letter of appeal from the applicant, and I walked the site to confirm that was the case, which
Okay.
they showed me the site.
Okay.
Is there a minimum size that a barn has to be to have that 100-foot setback?
There is not.
So what about a chicken coop?
So the chicken coop actually, we've went through the zoning ordinance. Chicken coop actually has to be 100 feet from any property line. But we confirmed with the applicant that chicken coop actually has been removed, and they provided that detail in their letter of appeals.
Are there any other questions for staff? Thank you. So we'll have a combined 10 minutes for the applicant to make an opening presentation for public comment for anyone wishing to speak in favor of the application, as well as a closing statement from the applicant. And we'll also have an additional 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the request. Would the applicant like to come forward, state your name and address for the record, please?
Anyone else here? Anyone else? We could tell her.
Shannon Regan Quigley, 1135 Nix Road.
Can you speak into the mic a little bit more so we
Oh,
can
I'm
hear you?
sorry.
Thank you.
Pull it down.
I'm sorry.
You pull it down. There you go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes,
Gotcha.
thank you.
Shannon Regan Quigley, 1135 Nix Road.
You want to tell us a little bit about your proposed barn and the location and your overall project, please?
Okay, so we are putting a barn to the east side of our property. And when we went to determine the best location for the barn. That was the best location for us personally. Because anywhere you put it, we were going to have a variance. A variance was going to need to be approved. So why not put it closer to the house where we can see the animals? We just thought that, we're getting horses so that we can see them and enjoy them. Why not have them closer to the house and closer to us? And so that's why we're seeking the variance, so that we can get going. And we do have a horse that's actually on hold for us, waiting for the barn to get built. So paying boarding on it right now. So I would really like to get him in the backyard.
How many horses can the barn?
2.
2, okay. And then the other question I had for staff, and you may be in a better position to answer this, is the location of the primary and secondary septic fields. Can we pull up the site plan
can
so
I-
she can point?
Can you see? Can you see this? Okay. So the septic is right in this area, towards the back of the house.
And that's the primary septic field?
Correct.
Okay.
And then there is another one that is right around here.
And that's the secondary?
Correct.
Okay. Any additional questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I think Adam asked earlier, why could you not consider moving that barn more to the right, or is it, you get it out of the 60 feet? Why can't it go more centered in the property?
Well, we thought about that, but having it in the center when you have horses and they're running around, it kind of doesn't give it a nice flow of the pasture. It breaks the pasture up a lot. And it just, we just thought that it would be a lot nicer and a more even flow, especially with how the trees are, to have it set to the left. If you put it in the middle, it just really breaks everything up, the view as well. And so that's why we would like to place it on that side if we can.
Thank you.
It appears the location that you selected for the barn is on the left edge of the house, but
Correct.
going straight back to keep that view shed that you were talking about.
Right here.
Any additional questions for the applicant?
I just have a comment,
Sure.
which is, I don't know how long you seems like you're just moving here. So my comment is that we have always tried to encourage these barns and even work to be able to put them in front of houses, because we saw a lot of properties that were transitioning over not to be farms. So welcome to Milton, and I do understand your line of sight to your barn and wanting to see if a horse is up or down at night. So totally understand that and want to accommodate that as best we can,
Okay.
as best I can. One other question for the applicant. In the DRB's comments, they had mentioned a natural wood roof color and brown stain siding.
Correct. Woodland is the color. We're going to use woodland.
Okay. So you wouldn't have any, if one of the board members put a condition on that, would that be an issue based on what's in the, okay.
What was the DRB's rationale for choosing, or at least making that recommendation? Did
No,
they?
They asked what color are picked,
They
and
asked,
then, the
Okay.
applicant
Yeah.
said that those are the color proposed. So they,
Okay.
Thanks. If you'd like, you can have a seat.
Okay.
Do we have anybody else wishing to speak in support of this application?
no, we don't have anybody.
Do we have anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
Nope.
Ma'am, if you'd like to come back and make any closing remarks. Sorry about that.
No, it's kind of to speak to Laura's point. I'm from Roswell, grew up there, rode at Wills Park, horse shows, and we moved out here for the sheer purpose of having land and a barn. And so I would really, appreciate this being approved. This is kind of my dream, what I've always wanted to do. And it's our purpose in being here. And we moved here because that's the vibe here. It's equestrian. And so we would just really love for this to get approved so that we can move forward because it's been quite a process.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions for staff at all?
The recommendation from the DRB, I mean, that's kind of general, which is fine with me. She says she had specific colors she gave them, so I mean, would it matter one way or the other?
Yeah, she didn't bring color samples to the meeting. It was just said.
Okay.
And would staff or the architect go through the process of approval on the colors that are being selected
Yeah.
at all?
Yeah, those colors are fine.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? I'll close the public portion of the meeting of this application and open the floor for a motion in a second.
I'd like to make a motion to approve V 22-20.
Second.
We've got a motion from Laura are there any conditions at all on that?
Yes, with the staff recommended conditions per the site plan from Solar Land Surveying, which was received on September 16th, 2022, and also to provide a foundation survey during the permitting process of the barn structure.
Second that as well.
Second. So we've got a motion to approve V 22-20 by Laura Bentley and a second by Zach with the following conditions. Per the site plan for solar land surveying received on September 16th, 2022 by the Community Development Department. And the second condition is to provide a foundation survey during the permitting process of the barn structure. Is there any discussion on this?
I have a comment just about the standards under which we do approve variances. I don't find that if relief is granted here, that this offends the spirit of the ordinance. We have always tried to encourage our rural heritage here. This lot narrows and leaving few other options to place the barn, and I would hate to see no barn go there. This particular applicant has also acquired additional property for the purpose of housing animals to make the property bigger. So the extraordinary and exceptional situations are understandable. I don't feel like this would be to the detriment of any surrounding properties. The most affected property owner is in agreement, and the public safety, health, and welfare is secured. Those are my comments.
My comments really just mirror what Laura has said. We talked about the view and the reason for not moving the barn further to the right. I think it makes sense. It leaves a larger area for the horses to graze in. And I think the location, what we're trying to do as a city in terms of encouraging more equestrian related uses is really what this applicant is showing us.
Yeah, I just add that it's, great taking up additional property for this purpose. The lot is not the most conducive for that, but adding on to it and, expanding the area for the animals is great.
I just think this is another conflict that I always have trouble with. We have these sort of, we want to be equestrian and these statements about, wanting to show barns and it to all be nice. But then we have an ordinance. We have a law, okay? And the law says you need to be 100 feet back unless you meet the 4 conditions for us to allow a variance. And one of them is that there's a hardship. Now, I've heard, it's nice for the horses and it's nice for a view shed. I'll just say, to me, that is not a hardship. And it does not meet the 4 conditions because there's not a hardship. I know, and it wasn't explained why the barn couldn't be moved over another 40 feet. It would be still a little bit out of compliance, and I didn't get the hardship involved with moving the barn. And I don't believe we've met that condition.
I mean, just to that point, I mean, I think it's just, it goes to the hardship being to the shape and topography of the lot itself. No matter where they were to place this, it fits everywhere but to the left or right because simply the size of the lot doesn't work from east to west.
But if you moved it
So-
if you moved it,
It would still not, you'd
it
have
would
to
be
get
a foot or
variance.
two in each direction wrong.
Yeah,
versus-
you would still
versus
have to
40
have-
Versus 40 feet.
Sure, yeah.
I
No,
mean-
I agree with that. I'm just,
But the
the
neighbor.
point would be is that you would have to get two variances. I guess one for each side or a variance saying that it would encroach each side by less than 100 feet. So, to me,
You're talking a couple feet, right?
right.
If you moved it, and well, I've made my statement. I'm not, I don't really
I see
No,
what
want
you're
to make a
saying.
big deal of this, but
And I appreciate your comment. What weighs on my mind is that the particular neighbor that's most impacted is supportive of your barn. So that makes a huge difference for me. Because when it comes to livestock, yeah, you do not want a neighbor that does not want your horses or pigs, well, sorry, not pigs, cows that close because life is miserable. So to have that approval from the most affected neighbor is very important to me.
Is there any additional discussion on that? I will call for a vote on V 22-20, 1135 Nix Road to allow a proposed barn to encroach into the 100-foot building setback for housing animals by 40 feet with the following conditions. Let me back up. The motion was by Laura and seconded by Zach with these two conditions. The site plan from Solar Land Surveying received September 16th, 2022 by the Community Development Department. And the second condition is to provide a survey during permitting process of the barn structure. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
nay.
The motion passes 5-1. Thank you, and please continue working with the city staff. The second primary variance this evening is V 22-21-16175 Birmingham Highway, which has been administratively deferred. So there's no action required by the board at this time.
Correct.
The third primary variance this evening is V 22-22-2330 Saddle Springs Drive. Staff, would you please present?
The property address is 2330 Saddle Springs Drive. The applicant is seeking the following variances: to allow proposed greenhouse to encroach into the 50-foot rear setback by 30 feet, and to allow an existing barn to encroach into the 100-foot building setback for housing animals by 33 feet. The site is a 4.88 acre parcel located in the Sunnybrook Farm subdivision shown in Exhibit A. The property is zoned AG1 and is located in the rural Milton overlay district. Applicable building setbacks for the lot are 60-foot front, 50-foot rear, and 25-foot side. The applicant is requesting to allow a proposed greenhouse to encroach the 50-foot rear setback by 30 feet as per section 64416D. 100-foot building setback is required for a barn housing animals as per section 64415-4A. The applicant is requesting to allow the proposed barn to encroach into the 100-foot building setback for housed animals by 33 feet. Therefore, this variance is requested. The applicant purchased the property in 2012 and the house was built in 1985. The applicant details in the letter of appeal that he believes the barn was also built in 1985. Based on the Fulton County aerial, the barn was existing in 2000, and that's as far back as it goes regarding aerials for Fulton County. So it did become built prior to Milton cityhood. The site plan shows that the barn is 67 feet from the northern property line, as shown in Exhibit B. Here's a zoomed-in version of the site plan. Here's the barn right here, and you can see the distance to the northern property line. And here is the proposed greenhouse, 20 feet from the rear property line. Here's the topography map that details this. There is an over 40-foot drop in grade throughout the property. However, this is rather gradual given the overall length of the property at 640 feet. In December 2021, the homeowner applied for a building permit to continue development for proposed greenhouse structure, which revealed the proposed non-compliant greenhouse location to staff. It was also brought to staff's attention that the applicant had poured the concrete pad foundation prior to receiving permit approval. After realizing the mistake, the applicant stopped all greenhouse construction, and the concrete pad remains today at the site. The concrete pad is encroaching 20 feet into the rear setback, and the applicant is, 20 feet from the rear property line, and is requesting a 30 feet variance to the rear setback. It also came to staff's attention during the variance process that the barn housing animals was less than 100 feet from the northern property line, which is 33 feet from the rear property line. Although the property is 4.88 acres in size, over half of the property is dedicated to pasture land for the goats and horses. I think the aerial will show that better. So right here is the fence for the barn, and goes all the way back here and cuts back. So really, I would say 50% of the property is pasture land for the goats and horses. As shown in the existing site and tree details in Exhibit D, the tree canopy covers a large area of the remaining space of the property. The applicant is proposing a landscape plan as detailed in Exhibit E, which includes 8 eastern red cedars, 5 Foster hollies, and 6 little gem magnolias. The applicant also provided a view corridor map as shown in Exhibit F, which details the closest neighbor's home is 294 feet from the proposed greenhouse. The adjacent neighbor support map shown in Exhibit G shows support from all 5 bordering property owners. Layers of support are detailed in Exhibit H in your packet. Photos of the property are shown in Exhibit I. As you can see below, this is the existing concrete pad that was forward, and the applicant stopped all construction once he realized he did not have the appropriate permitting. Here's the barn, and here's the pasture land. The applicant also provided some photos and detailed some additional information. Here's the home, and here's the barn, and he detailed in orange the septic area. And this yellow line right here is the 50-foot rear setback. Here's a view from the garden right here towards the barn, and vice versa. Here's the barn view towards the garden. And you can see the septic field in orange again, and then the yellow line is the rear setback line again. Here's a view of the concrete pad towards the east and to the west. And the applicant provided some additional photos and detailed, this is the greenhouse shade during some of the peaks during the day. And I'll let him explain that more in depth, but this is what he provided to the city. And lastly, he provided grade change details and water flow towards the concrete pad. This is flowing from the back of the property to the north of the property in a downward direction. And finally, here's an elevation of the proposed greenhouse. On October 4th, 2022, the DRB met and had the following comments. DRB recommends approval of this variance request. If approved, staff recommends the following condition. Per the site plan for Foothills Land Surveying received on September 6, 2022 by Community Development Department, and provide a foundation survey during the permitting process of the greenhouse. Any questions for staff?
Do we know if there were any trees that were cleared in that area? Or is that going to be a question for the applicant?
I'll let the applicant answer that
Okay.
question, yeah.
This subdivision is not governed by any covenants.
Correct.
Is that
There's
correct?
no HOA. That was
Okay.
one of the first questions I had for the applicant.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for staff?
Where can a greenhouse be located on the property?
Primary setbacks, but it can't be located in the front of the primary structure.
Is there a maximum size on a greenhouse that's permissible?
As long as you meet the lot coverage, it can be as big as you want.
Were there any other opportunities for a location standpoint for that greenhouse that would have been less impactful? It appears that there's some room where it could slide forward and out of the side yard setback. or excuse
Yeah,
me,
from walking the
setback.
site, there was an area about 10 to 15 feet farther closer to the house. Appeared there were no trees there. And it would have been less of an encroachment, but it looked like you'd have to encroach the rear setback slightly, even if you moved it up a little bit. And I think this picture actually shows it best. Right here. So yeah, this area right here would be amenable.
That's not where the septic is.
Correct. Yeah, the septic is over here.
Got it.
The other side, yeah.
So can you go back to the site plan? There you go. So approximately a third of that slab where the greenhouse is at is encroaching into the setback at this time? Is that?
No.
Looks like all of it.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
I'm
it's
sorry.
50
I'm
foot.
sorry, I was looking at the
Back
other,
Yeah, the 50 foot's right here.
looking at the other structure.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's
That-
20 feet from the rear property line.
The box with the X's, that's their just garden, I think, where the septic is.
Any additional questions for staff? Thank you. So we'll have a combined 10 minutes for the applicant to make an opening presentation, public comment for anyone wishing to speak in favor of the application, as well as a closing statement from the applicant. And we'll also have 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in opposition. The applicant, please come forward, state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Joe Lample, 2330 Saddle Springs Drive. And I have a prepared so I can be efficient. Make the most use of the time, but I won't need it all, I hope. Members of the Board of Zoning Appeals, good evening and thank you for hearing my request. My name is Joe Lample, and I am the property owner for the variance request at 2330 Saddle Springs Drive. And I'm here this evening for two reasons. First, to respectfully request a setback variance regarding a greenhouse to be installed at my home. And second, when applying for that variance, it was brought to my attention that I should also seek a variance regarding our existing barn that houses our horses, goats, and chickens, because as we learned, it sits within the setback by 33 feet. We believe the barn was built along with the house in 1985, and we purchased our home in 2012. Now, regarding the greenhouse variance, I have the following information that I would like to share with you. I originally submitted the permit request for my greenhouse in December 2021, but when I got the response back from the city, I realized I had a problem because that's when I first became aware of setback requirements. Not realizing the error at the time, I had poured the foundation within the setback, and as soon as I discovered my mistake, I stopped the project and put the greenhouse delivery on hold. That has led me here tonight before you to seek approval of my variance request to site the greenhouse at this location, which is within the 50-foot setback with an encroachment of 30 feet. As a point of note, just beyond the property line that I'm encroaching on borders a 30-foot wide natural buffer of overgrown brambles and trees that is essentially a rather deep, dry drainage ditch immediately between this property line and my neighbor's fence line. And I do have written approval and support from that neighbor who is at 7 Gables Farm and all surrounding neighbors as well. But if you review the site plan and various enclosed photos, and there are many, you'll see the concrete pad that was poured in anticipation of the greenhouse's arrival. Clearly, that was a mistake on my part, and I am happy to explain the circumstances and the timeline of how that happened, if time permits, this evening. But I'd first like to explain why I'm requesting a variance for this particular location. To be clear, though, had I known then what I know now, I certainly would not have poured the pad until this was resolved. But in either case, I would still be standing here today requesting a variance for this exact spot, and I'd like to explain that. So here's why this site is the only viable location for the greenhouse on my property. If you don't mind turning to Exhibit D in your package, that will help illustrate my points that I'm about to cover. For a greenhouse to function as needed, it really has to be placed on a level site and in a location that receives as much unobstructed daily sunlight as possible. This location for the greenhouse is necessary because our property's topography and the dense tree canopy makes this the only suitable site which provides those requirements: unobstructed sunlight, level ground, and which does not restrict access to the normal operations of our barn, encroach on our septic drain field, and other daily activities in managing the farm. One other plus of this location is that the greenhouse will not be visible to any of my neighbors. I did consider other locations, with approximately, though, half of the total property eliminated from consideration because it serves as active pasture for our horses and farm animals, and much of the remaining property is heavily wooded and utilized for my business related to growing food and horticultural education. Only 2 locations were ever potential options for a 12 by 36 foot greenhouse footprint. However, when I looked into this other potential site, the one between the barn and the vegetable garden, that was ruled out for several reasons. And again, Site Plan D will give you some information there to help explain this. First of all, the topography between the barn and the vegetable garden is the main drainage corridor for that part of our property, and it funnels runoff down through that area into the drainage ditch along the nearby north property line. So accordingly, that ground around that area stays wet and it's prone to standing water, which is not a good situation for a greenhouse. Secondly, adequate sunlight is insufficient because there's a very large maple adjacent to the barn that blocks needed sunlight until late morning, and a large stand of hardwood trees towards the house that blocks some additional sunlight as the day progresses. Third, placing the greenhouse anywhere between the barn and the garden places it directly in the area which would impede access and maneuverability to and from the barn for day-to-day operations and routine delivery of hay and supplies by truck and trailer. The footprint of the greenhouse anywhere in that proximity would eliminate most of that space. And then fourth, the septic drain field occupies a good portion of that same area. And for this reason, all vehicles coming and going from our barn have to avoid this drain field area for maneuvering and instead utilize that lower area, which is where the greenhouse was considered when I was looking at the options. So therefore, placing the greenhouse anywhere in this general area will not work, which brings me back to the location specified in the variance request. Because our property's topography and dense tree canopy, this is the only suitable site that provides unobstructed sunlight and level ground, and it does not restrict access to the normal operations of our barn, encroach on our septic drain field, and other daily activities in managing the farm. Plus, the other benefit of the location of this greenhouse would not be visibly apparent to any of our neighbors, and I have their full written support from every neighbor who shares a property line with me. Also, I have provided a proposed landscape screening plan to offer additional buffering beyond the existing vegetation surrounding my property, and that's in your packet as well. And then last, but certainly not least, I'd like to offer another relevant bit of information about why I'm here requesting this greenhouse variance today. I've been a passionate gardener since I was 8 years old, But little did I know that my lifelong passion for gardening and growing food would lead to a full-time profession over 25 years ago now that reaches a global audience right here from Milton. In a nutshell, I teach people of all abilities how to grow food. From brand new gardeners to market farmers who are already growing food for a living, people want to learn how to do it or learn how to do it better. My outlets for reaching an audience craving this information now more than ever includes a national television series on PBS, a top-rated podcast, an online gardening academy, books, and more. But equally important is reaching and teaching people who want to grow food right here in this community, our community. For example, little did I know when my daughter Amy and I started a tomato seedling business 4 years ago. To help her earn college and car and college fund money, that it would double in size every year since. And now the majority of our customers are a Milton community who have come to rely on our garden farm grown organic tomato and pepper seedlings every year to plant in their own backyard vegetable gardens. But with each new season, while our business continues to grow, that space that we have to grow it all in, it has stayed the same. It's in my home office and the hallway just outside of it. And to say that we have outgrown that space that we need to do this work and keep up with the growing demand would be a drastic understatement, which leads me back to the variance request. It's the only solution that we have to be able to continue serving this community as well as the larger audience that I reach with my primary work of teaching people how to grow food from seed to harvest. The greenhouse we're seeking a variance for is this one vital resource that we don't yet have, and it's all that's required for us to do everything that we need. And it comes down to this one and only viable location on our property to make it finally happen. And as I hope you can see, the proposed location addresses the challenges of sun, topography, existing tree canopy, views, and privacy, while the other location does not. So thank you for your consideration, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Good. Yeah, I got a couple of questions.
Yes.
What do you do with the animals out there?
In the barn area, the pasture?
Yeah.
They're free ranging in the pasture during the day, and at night they go into the barn when it's cold. The chickens are free ranging as well as are the goats.
Would it be possible to reduce the size of the pasture?
It is not. For the quantity of horses that we have, it's recommended that you have 1 acre per horse. And we currently have 3 horses out there, and the amount of acreage that we currently have for the animals, including the goats and the chickens, is about 2.4. The pasture is 54% of our property.
And what purposes do the animals serve?
For when our older daughter was riding, we had them for her because she was an equestrian student. She's now living in a townhouse in Alpharetta, but then now we don't want their family. What it is.
So I mean, you say that the one location is the one and only viable location. I mean, you could put it somewhere else on the property that would be viable, but you don't want to get rid of the pasture land.
Correct. As long as we have our animals, they need all of that pasture. And to put a greenhouse in that pasture with those animals as they're running and doing about their business, as well as what we would be doing to serve the greenhouse and the plants coming and going, it just would not be viable. Plus the distance from the rest of our growing operation would be another consideration. But mainly it's what I said before that.
Okay. Would it be possible to, if you look at your site plan there, Exhibit D,
Yes.
it's probably easiest to see. Do you know how far the back corner of the pad is from the property line? Do you see where I mean? You got the
Yes.
trees around on Exhibit D and everything, or Exhibit E, for instance, the back corner there. On the big plan, we only have one measurement. Do you know
It's 20 feet.
the other side is 20 feet on the left, on the right? Do you know how far that is approximately?
So the other, that same edge on the other, not the 20-foot one, but the
Right,
other edge.
Yeah, that if you take that straight line down towards your house, do you know? approximately how far that would be?
I could, not offhand, I could do the math, but I'd need a calculator. But the corner, catty corner to the 20-foot corner is right on the edge of the setback line. So,
Right.
and the
Okay.
width of that pad is 12 feet.
So do you think it would be possible to take where it sits now and rotate it 90 degrees so it runs more parallel with your house and not put in the cedars to block any sunlight?
No, before, when I poured the pad, I had already looked at every possible scenario on where the pad needed to sit so that it received the maximum amount of sunlight throughout the day. And the reason why I put it in that very spot and not even any closer to the trees was because as the angle of the sun is tracking across my property, it shades right up to the edge of that pad. And if you look at one of those pictures that I provided, there's that shaded, those two pictures of the shade. And for the area where the pad is, you can see that shade encroaching right up to the edge of where that pad is without going onto the pad.
How long do you know does that shade stay there?
For the middle to the latter part of the day, which is a critical time.
Go ahead.
On the scale of expert to beginner, where do you put yourself in understanding that exact thing and how the plants should grow and would grow in a greenhouse?
I'm an expert. I do it for a living. On that scale.
Yeah.
And going back to that greenhouse picture, all the sunlight is natural?
Yes,
So you don't anticipate having to light it at night or anything?
I don't anticipate at all providing supplemental light.
So no electricity?
I would
going-
like to have electricity eventually because I may need heating.
Okay. But no lights at
I
night?
would not need it for lights.
Okay.
You may have said this before, but just once again, what was the reason it can't lie between the barn and the garden right along the 50-foot line there?
Because that area is at the bottom of a drainage corridor. And so the water was, when the land was graded, it was graded such that that was basically a funnel for all of the water in that area to go right between the barn and the garden. Secondly, it's soggy down there. Thirdly, the footprint of the greenhouse, if you placed it anywhere in that general proximity, it totally takes away the opportunity for maneuverability for truck and hay delivery or any normal farm access coming and going to that area because of the way the barn is sited. The doors to get into the barn are at an odd angle. So it requires some maneuvering to back equipment up to offload hay and things like that. So they're always down in that area. And if we moved it anywhere higher up on the hill, we're into the septic drain field.
Okay, so deliveries or whatever you're talking about come in not from the pasture side. They're coming from.
There's a service road that goes right along the fence line to the barn.
Okay,
Yes.
that's
And
not shown
they
here.
hug that line to avoid the septic area.
Oh, okay, I was looking at the,
Yeah, look at D. I think it's got a
all right.
picture of that little road with the turnaround.
Right.
Is that what you're talking about?
Right.
So on that picture, the access you're talking about in the barn, is that to the kind of back side or the front side towards the house?
The access into the barn is towards the house, away from the pasture.
Michael, can you pull up the site plan so he can point to that? Thanks.
Okay. Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. So vehicles and equipment comes down this way, and all loading and unloading and access into the barn is through these barn doors right here. And on this backside, that just goes off into the pasture, but there's sacrifice areas and fenced-in paddocks that just makes it inaccessible for deliveries. It's never been used for that. It's always been through this area here. But as they come in, they have to hug the fence line to avoid the orange lines there of the septic drain field. And then these trailers are pretty long, usually along with the pickup truck beds. And so they're then jockeying in this direction, which is right along that setback line, which is where the greenhouse would have to be to avoid the septic area, and it eats up the vast majority of that maneuverability area.
Question for you related to the time frame prior to that slab being poured. Were there trees in that location? How much grading was done when you poured that slab?
There was just a little bit of grading to smooth out the area, but it was always the most level area on the property. As you head towards the trees, the grade gets steeper, and then it tends to level out, as hopefully some of those pictures depict. We got tree removal permits for a couple of trees that were in decline along the property line, but it had nothing to do with the greenhouse because they were dying. We did take out, while we were there, we took out some caliper trees that were maybe 6 inches, one pine, a couple of sweet gums, but nothing significant. That area was always mostly like that.
And that approval came from the city arborist to remove those
Yeah.
trees?
So I'm sorry?
The city arborist gave you approval to remove
Yes, sir.
those trees?
Yes, sir.
And was there a requirement to replenish or replace any of those
There was
trees?
not.
I think they probably met the canopy requirement because for the larger lots, canopy is 25%. So
Thank you.
This page here that shows the sight lines,
Yes.
if you're looking at that, there's a green structure that's just past your fence line. Is that a house or is that another barn?
I'm going to look at what you're looking at.
Okay.
That is a barn, or we're not sure if it houses animals.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's a barn on another property,
Yeah.
just on the other side.
The trees that you're planting around the greenhouse, are those going to impede the sun when they kind of get healthy and get big?
They are not going to impede the sun because I'm going to plant them far enough away from the greenhouse so they still provide the visual screening without impeding the access to the
They don't
sunlight.
get too tall so that it won't bother it.
In 30 years, some of them will, but
Got it.
they'll be mixed in with the other hardwoods.
Got it.
When you spoke with your neighbors requesting their support, was there any conversation related to whether the greenhouse would have lighting at all or not?
There was none at all, no discussion whatsoever. They didn't ask, and I may have told them, but it never came up, and I'd never intended on putting lights in there, so it was a non-issue.
If we put a condition on that to where it can't be lit, is that something that would be okay?
You could do that. Oh, one thing I'd like to just add while we're on that discussion. There may be times where supplemental lighting during the daytime, on a cloudy day, for example, in the wintertime when you're starting seeds and you have periods of extended cloud cover, you're missing opportunities for photosynthesis unless you provide supplemental lighting, at which point I would like to add potentially the option to have that, but it would be during the day because I operate on a 14-hour lighting cycle when I'm doing it inside, so that's going to not go into the nighttime. So if you wanted to refine it, that would help.
Any additional questions for the applicant? Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor?
We have one support.
So we've got a minute or two left, I guess.
you want to speak?
Yeah, David, come on up.
You have only 90 seconds.
Please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Dr. David Filer. My address is 14250 Saddle Springs Lane. I live in Sunnybrook Farms, approximately 0.2 miles from the subject property. I'm here in favor of this. This checks all the boxes that Laura talked about in the last case. It supports Milton agronomy. It supports equestrian neighborhood and facilities. The proposed greenhouse, from my aspect, is deep in the pasture or deep in the woods behind Joe's house. So I don't see that as an issue. It seems to check what we're trying to do in Milton, and it's a double check to be able to have not only an equestrian and agricultural, but an educational agriculture. I've gone by his house different times of the day, and I'll see him and his cameraman out there shooting. It's a wonderful thing that supports and promotes our area as the beautiful area that it is. And I can't think of anything better. To your point, existing pasture, I'm a veterinarian. I've sewn up more horses running by low-hanging trees, or I'm sorry, low-hanging roofs from sheds, barns, and greenhouses. It would be very dangerous to their livestock. As you know, horses have a tendency just to run because it's fun. And when they get around these structures and they turn, I've sewn up more horse heads than I care to. So in the existing pasture would be a very unsafe place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in
No
favor?
opposition.
Okay. Sir, if you'd like to come back up and make any closing remarks, we're really limited on time. We had 10 minutes.
Thank you.
So I'll give you about 30 seconds.
Okay. I just thank you for your time. This has been something a long time in the works. It's the one thing preventing us from continuing to do what we do without the limitations that we've been working under. We've managed to produce a tremendous amount of goodwill and education towards an important subject that everyone now needs more than ever, and that's to learn how to grow some of their own food and to garden. And so fortunately, I've had the opportunity to be in a position to help people with that, but now I'm at a kind of a standstill and not able to advance where we'd like to go without the help of this one missing element. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Are there any questions for staff? I'll close the public portion of this application and open the floor for a motion and a second.
I'm making a motion to approve based on staff recommendations and the site plan from Foothills Land Surveying received on September 6th. And also that the applicant provides a foundation survey during the permitting process.
A second.
So, and there's two variances here as well.
The barn also.
Yeah, isn't that all included in the?
Yes, you
in
can
the
say
survey?
both variances, yeah.
Yeah, but sorry, both variances.
So we've got a motion from David and a second from Zach on V 22-20.
Hodge, do you want to mention the no lighting that was mentioned earlier as potential
I
condition?
was going to make a friendly amendment on the lighting, but
Is that something we need to discuss afterwards? Or do I need to throw that in there?
You have
Throw
two
it in there for
options.
your
You can either withdraw and restate if that's the way you want to do it over here, or you can stand by, you've got your motion, your second, and then Laura can raise a motion to amend. That can get seconded, and then discussion can be on that. You can vote on them separately. So we'll start. As it stands, you have a motion and a second to approve with conditions,
Okay, let's leave it at that, and then we can discuss it.
and that would open
So-
to your motion.
Let me repeat the motion that we have from David and a second from Zach. To allow a proposed greenhouse to encroach in the 50-foot rear setback by 30 feet. The second part of that variance is to allow for an existing barn to encroach into the 100-foot building setback for housing animals by 33 feet. And there are two conditions. The first condition is per the site plan from Foothills Land Surveying received on September 6, 2022 by the Community Development Department. And the second is a foundation survey during the permitting process of the greenhouse. I'll open it up for discussion.
So the reason I didn't put anything, or I didn't think that there should be any condition for lighting is because of the way that he stated he is going to need supplemental lighting during the day. I mean, are we going to get so technical that he can't put lights in it from 4 p.m. until 6 AM. I mean, that sounds,
And every other structure there has a light on it, I'm sure. And I agree with you, and I understand. I'm a gardener, and I like to start seeds, and you need a light on them to start those seeds to get them going before you actually put them out. And so I think having a little electricity in there, maybe we put something in there about having the huge halogen lights that I think we talked about before, where it looked like a spaceship. We definitely don't want that, but to have a little light in there to start the seeds, I don't think is outside the realms of what we're trying to accomplish here.
and I think if we start getting that technical with the amount of light that he's allowed to produce, then it's outside the scope of.
Isn't there a covenant? There's an ordinance on how
There
much
there
light
is
can
a,
hit
there
the
is
property
ordinance
line
on night
already.
sky, so
Okay.
that's
All right.
covered.
I'm satisfied.
So one of the questions that I asked the applicant is when he went to his adjacent neighbors and asked for their support, did the question come up about lights or not? And from my recollection, there wasn't really a discussion about whether lights would be on at night or not.
Yeah, it sounds like he was saying the light would just be during the day. Could you limit it to no light in the evening?
What if he needs to go out there to
No, that's
look
what I
at
was
something?
thinking.
I mean, to have a light bulb in the house.
I think the view shed is so far that I don't,
That's what I-
especially
yeah.
with the ordinance, it probably saves that. I
Yeah.
mean, from my perspective,
Yeah, I mean, let's just say what we're thinking. We've had one of these come at us before. But I can tell you, this neighborhood is I love this subdivision because it is a neighborhood, but you get the feeling when you go in there that you have a lot of leeway with how you use your property. And that's what we need to be trying to accommodate in Milton. So I'm satisfied with the pictures of your greenhouse and your neighborliness with all of your neighbors supporting this. I certainly don't want to further constrain you. So I'm satisfied with not having that in there. I have just a few other comments. First of all, I'd like to thank you for, it's when you're on your property and you feel like you're working, a farm, it's hard to remember that we do have setbacks. So thank you for stopping and asking more questions instead of going forward and getting further. I certainly understand the pasture. It is like spun gold when you have animals that are trying to graze all the time. So it's not something that you can swap out easily, because what happens is the more you use that land, it gets beat up and you don't have grass, and then your neighbors get really mad. So it's ugly. So I can find my way to, you are very, very, very efficiently using what you have. And I understand that. It also weighs heavily on me that you have the support of all 5 of your neighbors. Again, the vision of council and many people is to try to find ways for people to keep their property and let it work for them. So I'm in support of this.
I think we should at least briefly mention the barn, because we didn't talk about that at all. I don't have any objection to it because it was there, it was existing. Apparently no complaints about it, and it only comes up at a matter of course because of this quite small greenhouse that's being put in. So I think we ought to at least mention the fact that the barn is probably not a problem.
yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, I mean, the one issues that I have are, I totally agree with what Laura says. The hardship, not caused by the applicant being the shape, size, topography. I mean, he's cutting out 50% of his property to get a hardship to put it back in the corner. I understand the animals, I understand the grounds and what they're used for and all that kind of stuff. It's still usable space. Does that get to a hardship? Maybe. The other thing, I have an aerial photo here that shows the shadows you're talking about. And it looks like maybe, I'm drawing on this thing. you could potentially turn it 90 degrees, miss the shadow, and get all the light based on this aerial. You know, is that doable? I don't know. I'm not, you know, you'd have to get out there and mark it and see if that would work for you. That would be, you know, a suggestion of mine would be to turn it, and if it hits in this area where it looks like it has the same amount of sunlight in this aerial photo, and I see the shadows that go right up to the thing, or at least the pad that you got, it's possible, which would basically take half of the pad and pull it into the property. You would still need some part of the setback. Also understand that there's a big drop off and the nearest house is so far away that it really doesn't have an effect on the rear property. And I think that's the intent of the setbacks, is to protect the property lines, to protect the neighbors, to protect what they're seeing and what's happening on the neighboring properties, and having a mutual respect for that. So I'd love to know if it would fit and work and what you think of it as far as your expertise in the growing, and if that would work based on my doodling. But those are really the only comments I have.
So Adam, based on some of your comments there, I initially thought maybe we could rotate that structure as well. And I'm not sure if I'm on target with this one or not, but the way it's currently situated, he has the vast majority of the light on the longest side of the building.
Right.
Maybe that's what he was trying to maximize.
Exactly.
Versus if we turn it 90 degrees, he's got a shorter side that's
Does that
going to
make
have more of
sense?
the daylight.
Sure. Yeah, and I understand that.
I figure that's why I asked the question, is if anybody's going to know where the best place for this thing to go is, it's him. If he is indeed an expert, I believe he is. And so I tend to agree with where the place is, based on that.
Any other comments at all?
So your
We had a motion, a
motion
second.
good? Yeah.
So I'm going to restate the motion and we'll take a vote on it. It's petition number V22-22-2330 Saddle Springs Drive, two-part. The first part of the variance is to allow a proposed greenhouse to encroach into the 50-foot rear setback by 30 feet. Second part is to allow an existing barn structure to encroach in the 100-foot building setback for housing animals by 33 feet.
I need to say it is done as shown in this picture,
I don't think we can at this point because we've already got the motion and the second.
unless we amend it.
And there are two conditions. The first condition is per the site plan from Foothills Land Surveying received on September 6, 2022 by the Community Development Department. And the second condition is to provide a foundation survey during the permitting process of the greenhouse. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The motion passes unanimously. Please continue to work with the city staff. Thank you. Item D on our agenda this evening is V22-23160 Deer Haven Lane. Staff, please present.
Thank you.
The property address is 160 Deer Haven Lane, and the applicant is seeking the following variance: to allow a proposed tennis court to encroach into the 75-foot impervious setback. The site is a 2.05 acre lot located in the Deer Haven Preserve subdivision. The property is zoned AG1 and located in the rural Milton overlay district. Applicable setbacks for the lot are 60-foot front, 50-foot rear, and 25-foot side. The applicant is requesting to allow the proposed tennis court to encroach into the 75-foot impervious setback. As you can see in Exhibit A, this is the Deer Haven Preserve final plat, and it's very recent as it's from 2021. As you can see from the property, there is a flowing stream in the rear of the property, which requires a 50-foot city undisturbed buffer and a 75-foot impervious setback, which apply to the stream per section 20.426(1) and 2. The applicant is proposing to build a tennis court that encroaches into the 75-foot impervious setback, which is prohibited. Therefore, a variance is requested. The lot overall has a steep drop in grade towards the rear of the property with an overall site drop of 38 feet. The applicant met with city staff in March 2022 to discuss variance options for a proposed tennis court in the 75-foot impervious setback, as shown in Exhibit B and C. And I'll go through both options with you. The applicant was still in the conceptual stage of the single-family home design when the applicant met with city staff in March 2022. City staff recommended moving the proposed house footprint as much forward as possible, which would reduce the 75-foot impervious setback variance amount needed for the proposed tennis court. The applicant agreed with city staff and began working on a proposed plan that moved the house closer to the front of the property line. In doing so, this would require the septic drainage fields to be located in the rear of the property and inside the 75-foot impervious setback. Fulton County Health Department denied the applicant's septic plan to be located in the 75-foot impervious setback in July 2022, as shown in Exhibit D. In response to the Fulton County Health Department denial, the applicant is proposing the primary septic fields to be located in the northwest corner right here, and then the reserved septic fields in the northwest corner right here. The applicant is voting two proposed plans for the 75-foot impervious setback encroachment, which is required. Option 1 has a total encroachment of 2,381 square feet, shown in Exhibit B. Here's the encroachment right here in the 75-foot impervious setback, and you can see how close it is to the 50-foot stream buffer. Here is Option 2, which has an encroachment of 1,095 square feet, shown in Exhibit C. Here's the encroachment into the 75-foot impervious setback, and you can see the distance between the 50-foot buffer is increased. And Option 2, overall, there is a difference in between the two plans of 1,286 square feet, respectively. Option 1 has the pool directly behind the home and is aligned with the tennis court. Here's the proposed pool. Option 2 has the proposed pool shifted to the left over here, which allows less of an overall encroachment into the 75-foot impervious setback. The applicant is proposing two water quality mitigation plans, shown here in Exhibit E and F. In addition, the applicant is proposing a landscape plan that includes 24 thuja green giants that are between 10 and 12 feet in height, as shown in Exhibit G. The tennis court conceptual plan and lighting details are shown in Exhibit H. The adjacent neighbor support map is shown in Exhibit I, showing support for the neighbors to the east, west, and south, and the Deer Haven Preserve Homeowners Association. And those letters are detailed in Exhibit J. Photos of the site are detailed in Exhibit K. So this is looking from the street towards the back of the property. And you can here you can see the screening in the rear where the buffer is. This is facing the eastern property, which is the only home that's built. This is farther in the lot that faces the eastern property again. And this is all the way at the back of the property facing the buffer. This is from the back corner facing the western property, which is not built yet. And this is all the way at the back looking towards the street. This was an aerial photo provided from the applicant, and it kind of gives you a detail of the screening of the neighborhood. On October 4th, the DBRE met and had the following comments. The DRB recommends approval of the variance request and supports option 1, and that the architectural design of option 1 is more aligned and architectural superior than option 2. If approved, staff recommends the following conditions. Per the site plan from Keystone Land Survey Incorporated, received on September 6th by Community Development Department. Water quality treatment to be provided for all new impervious surfaces as determined by the city development engineer through the permitting process. And finally, provide a foundation survey during the permitting process of the tennis court. Any questions for staff?
So the pictures that we have where it's lined off, that black screening is the 75-foot setback. Back, yeah.
Well, that's where the tree save is. So yeah, you can't disturb it.
And if
I don't have that on record, but yeah, that's the intent of the tree save fence.
so to do this, they would be going in there and taking trees out and other vegetation.
Correct.
So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
to clarify, where the tree safe fence is currently located at in this photo is approximately the same location as the buffer.
I mean, that's the intent of the tree save.
Okay.
I don't have the site plan to match it up, but I see the orange fence. That's the intent of the tree
Okay.
save. Yeah.
Michael, I'm not sure what we're being asked here. Normally we get a site plan that comes to us, and this is what we're making a decision on. And this comes with two options. Are we being asked to decide on these options ourselves?
Right.
Normally you come with one plan, and we make a decision on that plan.
Yeah. Article 10 of the zoning ordinance requires 2 plans for a stream buffer request. So it actually is required to provide 2 different plans.
But you're recommending option 1.
Oh, no.
DRB.
DRB recommended option 1.
Says
It
more.
was architectural superior.
Can you walk us through the square footage of the encroachment between option 1 and option 2?
All right, here's option 1. As you can see from the DRB's comment, here's the pool, here's the house, and it's aligned with the tennis court here. And here is the full tennis court right here, encroaching into the 75-foot impervious setback. The total encroachment is 2,381 square feet. And you follow my hand right here, you can see it all throughout the 75-foot impervious setback, and you can see the proximity to the 50-foot stream buffer is much closer than option 2. And here's the encroachment for option 2, which is respectively 1,095 square feet. The difference of 1,286 square feet between 2 options.
How much farther away is it to the stream? It's not really the buffer, but the actual creek.
Well, from the edge of the
From
25.
center- Isn't it from the center of the creek, it's 50 and 75 feet?
Right. But how far, option 2 is farther away from the creek than option 1 is.
Yeah, option 2, I would say it's like 51. It's like right against it.
Yeah.
But option 1,
Gotcha.
yeah. I'd have to scale it, but my estimation 60 plus feet away.
Yep.
So earlier in your presentation, you had mentioned that the grade on behind the silt fence kind of slopes downward. Is there a plan for a retaining wall on the back edge?
There is, yes. Mm-hmm.
And it looks like it's right up against the buffer there. Is there even enough room to go in there and construct it without actually entering beyond that?
It would be very difficult to not encroach the buffer, especially because it's right against 50-foot City of Milton buffer.
Michael, I'm still going to go back to my question earlier. You said something about there was an ordinance somewhere. It said something about you have to submit 2 plans. This is the first time that I can remember that we have been given an option of 2 different site plans and that we needed to decide which one to go with. It just seems to me, in past cases, we have said, if we can't decide what we're doing here, we're going to defer this, and they come back with a site plan that is what they're going to do. it seems like that has been the normal course. I don't really like the idea, quite frankly, that we are deciding on two different site plans. I don't think that's our role. I think we have to decide whether a variance is accepted or not, I agree. But I really have a problem with this, having two site plans presented to us. I've not seen this before in my short period on this, and I quite frankly don't think it's right.
So it's been in the code, but we have always interpreted as option one is encroach, and the other alternative, it calls for an alternative plan, and I have always interpreted as alternative is do not encroach at all. So that's why you never saw that second plan ever, but now we have actually started. Adam pointed out that we should have two plans once.
But why
and
would the
so-
staff not come back with one site plan? I don't understand that. It seems like the staff should be presenting to us a site plan that someone's asking a variance for, not two site plans. And somehow we're going to end up arguing here about which site plan we should go with, when I think what we really should be deciding on the encroachment of a plan that's given to us.
Right.
It seems to me this is almost a case for deferral. I really do.
Well, we can also say whether we want to approve the variance, period.
Now, I think the reason for two options, which is in the code, is you're coming before the BZA for a variance, and let's say you want a certain amount. We want to nudge you towards giving us another plan where it's less of an encroachment, so you have the option to look at two different site plans.
And
you can
the
do-
option for staff to have? It doesn't seem like the option should be for us to have.
Well,
I
we
don't know, it
have,
seems like you should be presenting to us a site
yeah,
plan
we
that we
should
can act
always
on.
bring you the least amount of encroachment. But in this case, they wanted to present the alternative that is a different organization of
They
the
being,
thing.
they be,
Applicant.
The
the
applicant.
applicant.
Mhm.
Okay, so in that case, in the past, like I say, we have always said, if there's not a firm site plan and the applicant doesn't know going this way or going that way, it seems to me that this is a deferral and that we should be looking at coming back with one case, one site plan presented to us. I just can't agree with this. I don't know.
Don, the reason there are two options that have been submitted,
Mhm.
for example, option one is an encroachment of 2,381 square feet.
Mhm.
Option two is 1,095.
Okay.
So if we're trying to protect the buffer, we're seeing what the difference is between the two options.
Right, so why wouldn't the least damaging case be presented to us then? I mean, I don't understand.
It is in the zoning ordinance, so I don't know if that is grounds for deferral, because
It's in the ordinance that they submit two plans to
Correct.
you. I can't imagine it says they have to submit two plans to us. And like I say, in every other case, we have said we're gonna, you're not ready for this, folks. You've come in not knowing what your site plan is. So we'll act on this when you tell us not you folks, the applicant. When you know which one you're doing, we will act on it. This is a choice that I don't think is our choice to make. I think the site plan needs to be presented in one site plan. And this is what we're acting on, is on a variance, not two.
I think we can modify the site plan either way. I mean, we have the ability to grant the variance with conditions to modify the site plan in any which way. Under the circumstances, we have two. I'm going to propose an alternative to these. That's going to make a third.
Okay, we can go through.
You know, but obviously we want to hear from them and then we can have a discussion. I am also more agreeing with the deferral under the circumstances, but I want to hear kind of everything as it plays and then
Yeah, let's go through it, but
see what we can ascertain
I think
from
this
it.
is not correct, but
So,
okay.
so are there any additional questions for staff at this point? Thank you, Michael. So we'll have a combined 10 minutes for the applicant to make an opening presentation for public comment of anyone wishing to speak in support, as well as a closing statement. So that's a total of 10 minutes. And there'll also be 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in opposition. If you'd like to state your name and address for the record, I would appreciate it. Tell us a little bit about your application this evening and the two options that you've
Yes,
presented.
good evening. Thank you. I'm Marty Anker with Anker Custom Homes. I'm the home builder at Deer Haven Preserve on Freemanville Road. And this is Brent Arrington, the property owner of Lot 4 at Deer Haven Preserve. So we began this process back in March. And actually, when I was working with the Arringtons to purchase the property, they wanted to find the perfect spot to build their house in Milton where they could have a pool and a tennis court. And I'll let Brent tell you a little bit more about their family and why this is important to them. But this lot is a 2+ acre lot. Topography is reasonable, which is sometimes hard to find in Milton. And the size of the lot, the shape of the lot appeared to be appropriate for what they were trying to achieve. So we moved forward with the acquisition of the lot. And as we started kind of laying out a proposed house footprint and where a pool might go, and looking at a tennis court dimension of 60 by 120, which is kind of a standard size tennis court dimension, we realized, looking at our soil study, that we were going to have some challenges with how to arrange these things. So as Michael was indicating, we went through a number of exercises of these different placements to figure out the best alternative, obviously with the objective of having no variance whatsoever, but then to evaluate the options of how to minimize any variance that we would need. So just to retrace what Michael mentioned, we tried pulling the house all the way forward to the front setback line, which was at 45 feet on the plat. And I believe it was done that way because it's on the radius of the cul-de-sac.
Can I stop you for 1 second? Michael, can you pull up the site plan? Thank you. If you wouldn't mind, can you just reference this as you're talking in
Sure,
terms of
sure.
the adjustments and changes
on-
that you made so we can follow?
You bet. You
Thank
bet.
you.
So this is a cul-de-sac over here, as you can see. So when this lot was platted, it was platted with a 45-foot front building setback. All the other lots, I believe, are all the typical.
It's 40.
Just 40. Oh, thank you, Michael. All the other lots are standard Milton setbacks. I believe it was platted this way because it was on the radius of the cul-de-sac. But we evaluated pushing the house all the way up to that front building setback to see if we could get the septic in the back and be able to fit everything without doing any variance. And as Michael indicated, the soils on that back half of the lot are not suitable for septic. And we went so far as to make a formal application to Fulton County, had them do a full review of it, and they submitted our denial back to us. So we then met with Michael and Shuba again and said, let us come up with some other alternatives for which a variance would be required. And we went back and worked with our engineers to do house placements and figure out best places to put tennis court and pool. And we came back to them with the option that you basically see here, where you've got the house, the pool, and the tennis court in line, which is what the Arrington's preference is, to have them all kind of confined to one space. And again, Brent will tell you a little bit more about that in just a minute. But when we met with Shuba and Michael, they said, are there any other alternatives that you could come up with that would have less of an encroachment? So that is what option 2 is about, because it would be understandable if I were just sitting here presenting option 1 to you, that you might say, are there any other options that would have less of an encroachment? Did you consider those things? So we really just wanted to show you that we did consider those things. And option 2 has less of an encroachment impact, but for a number of reasons, we think it's less suitable for the usability of the land and for the Arrington's particular use. So that brings us to where we are here. In your package, you can see we've done a full drainage and water quality study for both potential site options. We've prepared kind of a conceptual landscape plan to show full screening around the tennis court enclosure. As far as walls go, fortunately, where the tennis court would be located, there's not a tremendous amount of fall. So at its very highest or tallest corner on the back left corner, it would be 6 feet, but it really goes to like 2 or 3 feet to the right side, and then none along the sides of the tennis court and the front of the tennis court. So there really is very minimal impact with additional walls surrounding it. Also in your package, you've got kind of a proposed lighting plan, which is not formalized yet until we get the full site plan and the tennis court design documents put together. But it would obviously have to fall within the permitting regulations for the city And the lighting would have to have all the requirements to not bleed into adjacent properties and so forth. As Michael also mentioned, we have approval from all the surrounding neighbors and from the developer and HOA. And that being said, I'd like to introduce Brent and let him tell you a little bit about his family and why this is important.
Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, thank you. My name is Brent Arrington, and I'm the property owner at 160 Deerhaven Lane. Again, thank you for your time for considering the variance request. As Marty said, for us, this is really about trying to create a as enjoyable a home environment as we can. Myself, my wife, my daughter all enjoy playing tennis a lot. We also have a special needs son who we hope to kind of get into it, but at the moment, it's a little hard to go to a club or even a shared neighborhood with shared courts because we would essentially have to have a babysitter to keep track of him while we try to play. So this would give us an opportunity to have an area within our own home where we could actually enjoy an activity that we all enjoy together while not worrying about what he's doing. And also, it would give us kind of a more enclosed, controlled space in the back where he can run around and do his thing. And we wouldn't have to worry about him getting into things like, getting into the woods or getting into, like digging up dirt and grass and everything, which he did when we had our normal backyard. So it really will give us an opportunity to have just a more enjoyable backyard area. And to the earlier point, to make clear, option one is our preference for a number of reasons. One, we think just aesthetically, we think it will look better in the neighborhood. Everything is more hidden behind the house. So it would be pretty much not visible at all from the street. It also allows us to slide the court a little over to the right slightly. So it gets a little further away from the closest neighbor to that right side. And moving it back a little bit actually drops it slightly lower compared to that neighbor. So it's easier to screen with trees and everything. So the visibility from that neighbor would be less. The other neighbors are very well screened. I don't know if you could see from the photos by the existing trees and the stream buffer that are there. So in the summertime, you wouldn't be able to see anything at all with no additional screening trees added, but we do plan to add additional screening trees to hide that from any other neighbors.
I've got a question for you, and I don't know how else to state it, but do you feel that there's just too much happening on this lot between the pool and the tennis courts? Because we're looking at a 2,300 square foot encroachment into the buffer on a 2-acre lot.
So that's in terms of
Have you considered possibly reducing the size of the pool and minimizing the actual encroachment that's in the buffer?
Right.
And you had said your
that's
preference is option one, but you're
Right.
literally right up on that
Yeah,
about
so-
50-foot buffer, undisturbed buffer. How's that wall going to get constructed if it's right there?
So it's actually about, if you look, there's actually a measurement there. It's about, at its closest point, I think it's about like a foot and a half. It's 23 and a half feet, I think, back on option one at its deepest encroachment. That was part of the thinking for option two, was to try to do whatever we could to pull the court as far, like as close to the house as possible. And by moving the pool out to the side, that would allow us to do that. It's still only a difference of about 8 feet when you do that. If you compare the two options, like 8 feet in terms of the distance from the like setback, it does create a significant difference in terms of the overall square footage because the court is so long. But the actual distance of the setback, it's really only about 8 feet difference.
Okay, can I clarifying question? So
Yes.
between option 1 and 2, it's 8 feet.
Correct. So
Okay.
if you look at the back side of the tennis court, like the farthest encroachment there, the difference in that distance from option 1 to option 2 is about 8 feet further back in option
Okay.
1. Yeah. And the other thing is with option 2, when we pull the house forward and slide the pool over to the side, it creates this area in between the house and the court where there's not really a whole lot you can do there. So the plan there would be to have pervious pavers in between. So you're really kind of paving slightly more area, even though we would use pervious pavers there, where you're really kind of covering more ground that way because you're sliding the pool off to the side. Whereas here, we can pull everything in line and have, we could actually have grass off to the side on the one side.
And what site plan did your neighbors see? The first one?
They saw both. They saw both.
So they agreed with both?
They did, and they know that our preference is
one?
Yes.
It's the neighbors, well, to the left as I'm looking at it, where the pool, so the one where the pool would be more, closer to them.
Yes, and to clarify, that lot, on that side, the lot to the left side, the way that lot is shaped, the house is actually behind. It's actually on the other side of the creek. So that where that house would be positioned is not to the side. It's really more to the back, like bottom left corner of us. So they are completely on the other side of that natural tree buffer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And they live, and they've already moved in?
Their house is under construction.
Okay.
Let me ask you, go ahead now.
Okay, I was just going to have a question for you, probably for your engineer there. You've got a lot of information here on the water collection and stuff, which I don't pretend to understand. So my simple question is, isn't this quite a large amount of water to having to mitigate coming from such a large area of the tennis court and the pool combined? And how does it actually get, is these many flow wells that can just hold this water? Because I think this is a lot of water coming off here, isn't it?
It's scaled for the size of the structure. So it's all engineered to accommodate flow. You can see the one where there's kind of the two different colors on the site plan. It shows both the water flow coming off of the roof and the impervious surfaces, including the tennis courts and how those would be separated.
I'm not seeing particularly, are the flow wells on that same diagram? There's those little things on the side of the pool? And those are, no, that's something else over there. This
We
is
have the green and purple there. Are they not?
Yeah, the green and purple one.
The squares, the rectangles there?
Okay.
This is the field for this. This is the field for that.
Yeah, okay. But it seems like, again, I don't understand all your calculations, but I look at a big, large tennis court and I look at these smaller areas that are going to collect the water. That's going to hold all that water deeply into the ground. It doesn't flow out into somewhere else.
Correct. So the flow well is scaled for that whole portion of that kind of teal colored space. So it's not just the tennis court, but it's that section of the house. The pool and pool deck area would all go to that larger flow well, and then another one that's off to the back right corner.
There's 3 flow wells.
And that flow well is that, which line am I looking? Is that between the 50 and the 75? Or is that's between the 25 and no?
Yeah, 50 and 75.
Okay, like I said, I can't pretend to understand all the calculations, but it seems like a large amount of water that's going to have to be, captured.
I agree. That would all have to be approved through engineering with the permitting.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it appears that there's 2 flow wells that are in the 75, between the 50 and 75 impervious setback. One on the right side and one on the left side of the property.
Yeah, I see that.
Any additional
Yeah,
questions? sir?
would you consider, based on option 2, changing the pool 90 degrees, flipping it to where it's running kind of north and south more so, which would allow you to pull the courts forward a little bit more out of the stream buffer? It wouldn't affect the pool or the surrounding area because it wouldn't encroach into any setback as it is.
So even without
And reducing the pervious pavers?
Right. Even without the pool being there at all, it's getting awfully close to the house on option 2. It's only, I think, about 25, 26 feet from the back of the house at that point. And there's also the grade of the lot. The garages are up on the kind of upper right side there. And so there's a pretty significant grade coming down from the garages down to where the court is. So I don't know if you can see, there's a retaining wall there coming down. So you're kind of it's getting really tight already in option B. Even if you were to remove the court, Yeah, or excuse me, even if you remove the pool, you would have the court almost right on top of the house at that point.
Did you say you're accounting for pervious pavers as part of the,
If you look at option 2, that space, the big space in the middle, that where the pool was vacated, they're showing their pervious pavers. That's why I'm saying there's actually in option 2, when you slide the pool over to the side, you're kind of paving an actual larger area than you are with option 1 when you have it kind of all in line.
yeah, we had I mean, I don't know that you can take credit for the pervious pavers in your calculations.
Right.
Okay, all right, got you.
But I don't think they're trying to get to the 20%.
No, I
Because
think
No,
there's
for-
plenty
No,
of
no, no, we're
coverage
not.
there.
No, I'm
We're
talking
still
about
within
for
that.
the amount of water that you have to calculate in runoff. I was surprised at that when our city engineer came in and said that one day, but yeah, you can't account for those pervious pavers.
Yeah, both options are under 25%.
Yeah.
It's a private road.
No, I was talking about water flow more.
And just to clarify on the subdivision covenants, yeah, everyone's good, the tennis
Yes.
court lights and,
Yes. Yeah, we're with as far as the HOA covenants, we're good there. And in fact, the developer is quite enthusiastic about having a court in the neighborhood. He likes to play himself, so.
okay.
And one of our letters of approval is from the developer, who is also the HOA.
So the declarant and the builder are two separate individuals or entities?
Yes.
Is that right? Okay.
Is it an unnamed creek? And then where does it go?
Stops essentially right here. If you take the back corner, that's the end of it. It goes this way. And then
It's
I think
almost
it
more of a
floods
wet
out into this
ditch.
area.
I mean, it's this big.
Right. And do you feel like in option 1, you can build the wall within that 50-foot buffer, stay away from that 50-foot buffer?
So this land was predominantly pasture. So I know it's a question that you're probably going to ask anyway. Did we take down any trees in this option? But predominantly pasture. So it is all clean land. The image that you saw up with the silt fence was based on an approved clearing and grading plan where we're trying to get ready to start the house construction and importing some dirt. But that is almost the extent of what would be cleared to include the entire tennis court and the retaining wall. So it wouldn't go any further into the 50-foot setback.
Got it. Okay.
How big is that retaining wall width wise?
As wide as a footing and some brick cladding. It's probably 12 inches, 10 inches.
So the footings that are underground there, I mean, how much beyond the wall are they going to extend?
Yeah, again,
I mean,
it's not
because
a big
obviously they're
wall.
not going to be able to get into the 50-foot buffer.
It goes from, it might be 2 or 3 feet tall at the right side, and it maxes out at 6 feet on the left side. So it's not a big footing. I don't think it would encroach. If anything, we could push it up underneath the tennis court to support it.
I got a question that may not, I don't know how, was the lot sold to you based on you being able to put a house, a pool, and a tennis court?
Well, I mean, that wasn't, I mean, there wasn't anything like expressly promised about that. We looked at the lot, we looked at the setbacks, and everything seemed to fit. The monkey wrench that we got was with the septic. When we tried to figure out how to fit everything with the septic and realized that the only real viable spots for septic were in the front of the lot, that limited how far forward we could move the house. And then that gave us a tight fit in the back.
You bought it with the intent of putting the 3 on that lot, right?
Correct, yes.
Would you be open to possibly, if one of the board members made a motion at some point later on in this presentation to a deferral, to spend some more time to kind of refine where you guys are at? And the reason being, I mean, option 1 is, again, 2,381 feet of encroachment. We've got flow wells that are inside the 75-foot setback. Option 2 is 1,095 square feet of encroachment. and 2 of the flow wells are still inside that 75-foot impervious setback. And then the other thing that was raised by myself as well as some other board members is the very close proximity to that 50-foot setback.
I mean, I think part of the reason that we've spent so much time looking at these two options before that is so that we could be prepared. And I guess respectfully, I don't know how much more we can, like how many other options there are besides the two that are presented. I mean, from my perspective, I feel like I would rather have a vote either on option 1 or if you prefer option 2, but I don't know what else we can come up with. We've gone through a number of iterations already to try to find any way to make it fit. And these are really about the only 2 viable options we can come up with to make it fit. So I'm not sure what we would accomplish with additional deferral time.
When did you start this process?
Well, we bought the lot in December of 2021.
Yeah.
And we've been thinking about this like since before we bought the lot, and we started working with the staff, I think in March. So yeah, we've spent quite a lot of time trying to find ways to make this work already. That's why I say I just don't know, another week or 2 deferral or whatever it would be. I don't see it making much of a difference, to be honest with you.
And the reason I asked the question is there are 4 standards that we have to take into account. And it isn't that we can take 3 or 4 of those standards. We've got to meet all 4 of those standards. And so I wanted to make sure that if that was something you guys were willing to consider, that at least the rest of us up here were able to take that into consideration as well, too. Are there any additional questions for the applicant? Do we have anyone wishing to speak in favor?
No opposition.
No opposition either?
Support.
Would you like to make a closing statement?
I don't really have anything else to say other than, again, thank you for your time and consideration. Like I said, this is something we've been hoping to do and trying to find a way to make work for a long time. And again, just thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
I would say thank you as well. And if you've been out to Deer Haven Preserve, if you haven't, I hope you would come and take a look. It's a beautiful neighborhood, and I think it is, I hope that you would find that it is representative of what you would like to see in Milton. And with the construction of the home and the balance of the project, the pool and the tennis court, if approved, all that will be done very nicely. And I think the end product would be enjoyed by the neighborhood and appreciated by the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff?
Yeah, I have one question. Can you, Michael, tell us what is allowed in the 75-foot setback?
No disturbance of vegetation.
The 75?
The 75?
Oh, the 75? Okay.
Yeah, you can disturb the land, but
Impervious.
surface is not allowed.
So you could grade, but you couldn't put a concrete pad.
So the tennis court is an impervious, even though they're trying to put a pavers. Consider that as an impervious surface. That's why it was not allowed.
Okay. Staff, what is the creek back there? Is it a ditch or is it a real creek? I mean, is it flowing water or is it just a wet ditch?
Well, it's complicated with water. That's what I will say. And so we go by the survey, and if they say that's a creek and we need state buffer is there and the city buffer is required, we take it as it is.
I mean, it's going to flow. Any way you look at it.
Any additional questions for staff? I'll close the public portion of this case and open the floor for a motion in a second.
I'm going to make a motion to defer this one. I'd like to see the pool turned if, in another option. Then it could potentially be moved. I don't know if that's feasible. I'm not an engineer.
Do we have a second on that, and then we can open it up for discussion?
Yeah, I'll second that.
So we had a motion by Adam and a second by Don to defer V22-23, 160 Deer Haven Lane.
Can you
Any
be
discussion on that?
clear as to the deferral date next meeting, I assume?
Yeah, the next meeting.
So we
Yeah,
got,
I don't think it's, oh, go ahead. I'll let you.
okay.
Go ahead. What?
I was going to say, I don't think I think the variance is getting into that 75 foot. It's not necessarily, like, even if they turned the pool or took out the pool, they're still, unless they don't do a tennis court or move the tennis court up to the house, I mean, that's what's going to get them outside of that 75 foot.
Yeah, it'd be to
So-
minimize the impact. I don't know if that's possible. To minimize it more than option 2. I have a problem with the amount of encroachment in option 1. I mean, to be perfectly honest, this is an undeveloped lot and it's platted a certain way. There's too much here for this lot.
I agree.
I'm struggling even to find a hardship because you want a tennis court, you want a pool, you want to do this. You don't have enough land for that. Especially because, yeah, you could, but you have a stream buffer. I mean, the developer knows that. It's platted. I mean, everyone knew that going into it. And now the city we're deciding if we can have a variance on the city code for a tennis court and a pool and all these different things. I mean, this becomes the problem. I mean, we've talked about it tonight, rural Milton, preserving land, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, this is not doing that.
So I think it's more.
For what hardship is there a need for a tennis court? What hardship, is not being caused by the applicant? What part of the property, the size, shape, or topography, or other extraordinary exceptional situations or conditions not caused by the applicant here fits that? I don't know. And so I look at it like, well, what's the minimum impact to this that you can say, okay, well, yeah, there's enough of a hardship to make it work.
I mean, if
Maybe.
Is it going to be a
You
deferral?
could turn the pool and move it forward. I don't know if that would work. I can't tell the elevations. I don't know how steep that is. If it pulls it forward some more, that minimizes the impact more. Is that an available option or viable option? I don't know. But if we defer it, they could come back and say, we explored it and it's not going to work. And then we're back to the same 2 plans. I mean,
The challenge that I see is we have the 4 considerations, and I can't find one of those considerations at this point based on option 1 or option 2 that I could say, yeah, it hits those 4 criteria. And it's almost, I feel like either the pool needs to be eliminated or the tennis court needs to be eliminated. If you look at the difference between option 1 and option 2, option 2
Is that 1,200?
Yeah, I mean, they basically reduced it by about 1,300 square feet. There's still some encroachment there. That's an improvement, but how much smaller can you make that pool in order to have both the pool and the tennis?
well, that's why my suggestion is to turn it. I mean, if you turn it 90 degrees, you can move the tennis court up and back to the left a little bit.
It's gonna be closer.
Potentially. I mean, I don't know.
the house,
That's what
maybe.
I'm saying. I don't know. I don't know how much closer is it, 5 feet? I mean, because we're talking about 7.5 on one end and 6.2 on the other side.
But they're still asking for 1,000 feet.
Mhm.
It would be a reduction is all I'm saying, is potentially. It may not be.
But if they came and only asked for option 2, and it's 1,200 feet inside the setback,
Well, it still becomes, yeah, you'd have to take the consideration. I don't know if I'm there on the considerations, but my point is there another option that maybe pulls it up to where it makes more sense?
I think
Possibly.
to your comment earlier, I don't think they should come back with two options, right? I mean, I think they should take another look at it again and come back with what they want to do, and we can act on it. If they can't, then we have to decide if 1,200 or whatever is acceptable to us. And I would encourage, if they come back, to minimize the impact to the greatest extent, but give us one option and let us decide if we can accept it with the mitigation of the flow water containment or not.
One of the things that I'd also like to mention is that the original location of the septic was denied by Fulton County. And so they adjusted the lot in order to meet the primary and the secondary field. And now what we're talking about is putting a tennis court and a swimming pool on a lot that's already tight. What happens if that primary and that secondary fails at some point? There's nowhere else really, at least it's been identified, say 30 years down the road when it needs to be replaced.
Are you saying that
And I just feel there's too much going on this
that maybe
2-acre
we
lot.
should not consider a deferral, but consider something else, like a denial on this hoax?
Well, the applicant felt that they wanted us to make a decision today on it. And
That's true. Well, we have,
I mean, I would like to give the applicant the opportunity to take more time and see if they can modify the plan where there's less of an encroachment, because we're still at 1,000 on the best plan that we have in front of us. And then we've got the flow wells that are also sitting in the,
Impervious setback.
yeah, in the setbacks.
But those flow wells those are underneath, right? I mean, they're not
Yeah,
exterior.
they're underground, yes.
So as long as,
you have an entrance and you probably can't plant on top of them or anything, I would think.
well,
I
but
don't
it's
know.
not an impervious structure.
Mhm.
Mess up, you dig them all up and put them back and then put it back.
And then
Yeah.
just dirt on top of
Yeah.
it.
Any other questions, comments? So we have a motion on V2223 by Adam and a second by Don to defer 160 Deer Haven Lane until the next regularly scheduled meeting. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay.
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 Was that?
We need a count.
It was Don and I.
Want to ask us, raise a
So
hands.
only
Hodge?
2 of you said yes?
I
To
believe.
the deferral.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Oh, to the deferral.
And all those that are
Wait a minute.
opposed to the deferral?
Could we do it over with a raise of hands or something? 'Cause
Yeah.
So 4 of you
Just repeat
said
it.
no to defer.
I don't know.
Oh,
Support.
all those in favor of a deferral on 160 Deer Haven Lane until the next regularly scheduled meeting, please raise your hand if you're saying aye. I'm not sure.
Okay.
All those opposed, say nay and please raise your hand.
That
But-
doesn't break anything because it's 3 and 3.
Yeah.
Okay, that just means it fails.
So we have to come up with something.
New motion.
So my opposition to the deferral is that the applicant has said that they have worked through the scenarios of this. I got to believe that. I don't know if he would want a pool that if it was turned and switched. I'm not comfortable. That's my reason for wanting to, continue,
The
so.
reason I said defer is because when somebody says, yes, I really want you to make a decision, that generally would mean I really want you to say yes to what I want. But if we say no, then that stops it completely. And I think there's always an opportunity to go back and do some more digging and figure it out so that maybe you could take this from 1,000 to, less, to have an option at a yes. I would want that.
You have another motion? Or?
Can a motion be reconsidered and voted on again?
I can remake,
I mean-
remake it.
Theoretically, you can raise it again. I would prefer to, if there's some reason to think that it would change, there's nothing that prevents you from making the same motion twice.
I'll make a motion to deny V22-23160 Deer Haven Lane to allow a proposed tennis court to encroach in the 75-foot setback.
I'll second.
We've got a motion by Hodge and a second to deny V22-23 to allow a proposed tennis court to encroach in the 75-foot impervious setback. Any discussion?
I mean, I still think there's, I'm not an engineer. I don't know. I think there could be a possibility of some shift, but I mean, I get it. I mean, if they've worked through every possible scenario, I mean, did they try turning the pool? I don't know.
If we say no, then when can this be brought back, or can it be brought back?
It's a 1 year.
A year, right.
Did it 1 year?
Or there is a major change in the site plan, like complete removal of pool or something like that,
If they're asking for the same, it substantially similar variance request, it would.
But if they
They-
change the site plan and they don't need a variance, then there's
don't
no
have to
need to
come
take
to
it.
Then they
you.
wouldn't have to come.
Right.
But
Yeah, and they can go back and do it without a variance.
Right.
no?
And again, what I stated earlier is there are two options. They've reduced the pool size already. I don't know how much more you can reduce the pool size and still get the benefit that they're trying to achieve between option 1 and option 2, and we come to option 3.
I mean, the pool
Can
is
be pretty
tiny
small
compared
to
to
the tennis court.
tennis
Yes.
court.
Well, I think more than a pool size, they want that tennis court at a certain distance. They don't want it right
Yeah.
in the
Tell me,
backyard.
right. Attached to the house.
Half the lot is setback.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Any further discussion on this? All those in favor of denying V22-23160 Deer Haven Lane, allowing a proposed tennis court to encroach in the 75-foot impervious setback, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay.
3 and 3 again.
I will open it up for another motion.
Can we talk before we, yeah.
Can you,
Somebody's got to make a motion.
Motion
We'll need a
first.
motion first.
How do you get out of this one?
Okay. I will make a motion to defer V22-23160 Deer Haven Lane until the next regularly scheduled meeting.
Second.
We had a motion by Hodge and a second by Zach to defer V22-23 to the next scheduled meeting.
Before we send them away for a year, I think we owe it to this family that just spent a whole lot of money on this property to go out and see if they can figure it out. That's why I think defer is the right move.
Zach, I agree with you that we should give them more time. It's up to them whether they want to take that. They can also withdraw their variance
Totally.
if they decide.
Yep.
And I think we've tied several times on our votes.
Yeah.
I'd rather give the benefit of the doubt to the applicant and let them decide if they feel they can improve it or if they want to, at some point,
Yep.
withdraw their application.
and I would just add the standards for consideration. We're really in a tough spot here. I mean, we're trying to adhere to our hardship criteria, which is tough because there's a lot on this property, and I agree. I know that you've made significant investment. We want you to be here in Milton. It's hard to, we've got drain fields and backup drain fields, and I've worked with Fulton County before. I know it's hard. So I agree with, at least allowing you to go back and see if there's anything. I mean, how about pickleball? It's a smaller court. I'm sorry, it's not funny.
Any further discussion on this? So we've got a motion by Hodge and a second by Zach on V 22-23-160 Deer Haven Lane to defer to the next regularly scheduled meeting. All those in favor, say aye. Please raise your hand. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously.
No.
It's-
It's
yeah,
mine.
it's mine. I think that's last case.
Yeah.
Item 7 on our agenda is consideration of appeals and secondary variances.
None.
Old business is item number 8 on our agenda.
None.
Question, I know we've got Thanksgiving coming up next month, so there's probably a lot of travel. And we had postponed the training with Paul. Do we want to schedule that? I'm looking for your guys' feedback on this. Do we want to reschedule or just wait till January sometime to do it during that meeting?
I like learning on the fly like we've been doing.
I think we ought to wait. I mean, we're supposed to get somebody else, right?
Yeah, we.
Yeah.
we
Jan
have to
Jacobus.
fill in.
Okay, so let's bring it up at our January meeting.
Well, let's wait for Barry's replacement.
Yeah.
As soon as we get it, we are fine to come back for a training.
The only thing I'm thinking might be a challenge between like Thanksgiving and Christmas
Yeah.
with people either being out or time constraints. So I think sometime maybe after the first of the year, probably best we can kind of figure out what works best.
November and December.
Yeah, November 15th, and December 13th.
Yep.
And if for some reason, in advance that you're not going to be available for either of those dates, let us know because we've got to have a quorum and we'd rather notify the applicants well in advance
Yeah, it
if
was
we're not going to
originally-
have a quorum.
It was originally going to be December 20th, but they bumped it earlier
Yeah.
for the holidays.
Item 9 on the budget, or excuse me, on the budget, I was working on budgets earlier today, on the agenda is new variance for site plan policy. Michael, you want to walk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. And BZA has purview over this. And after last month's BZA meeting where the applicant talked to us on Monday, 24 hours before the meeting, and wanted to change the site plan, we kind of wanted to come before you and say, all right, what's a policy we can put in place that prevents us from, scrambling and trying to change the site plan at the last minute? Our first thought was any change after the DRB meeting is prohibited, but after our BZA briefing with Paul, Hodge, and Adam, sometimes the DRB recommends changes. And let's say we want additional screening. We want you to reduce the encroachment. So we think, as staff, that this new language, which states, unless a site plan change is specifically requested by the DRB, then it's prohibited. And you'll have purview over this, and we would like to hear your stance and where you come from on it.
One thing I'll add is that during the DRB, the public's invited to speak, and there's the opportunity for the applicant to get feedback, both from the public as well as from DRB. And so it's important just to see all of that in any revised site plan. From a timing standpoint, I'm not sure how all of that would work. I was wondering if we could do it where maybe they had a week after the DRB to submit their final site plan, and then we kind of go with that.
Yeah.
And
think that's
the
pretty
other
fair.
piece of that is also making sure that if a adjacent property owner is signing off on approval or denial of a particular application, that we know that they've seen the latest version that's going to come before us. Last thing I'd hate to do is see a bunch of check marks. And
Right.
The plan's been revised.
And actually, if you
there's a
saw
potential.
crossing, I'll go to it now. I had them resubmit letters that stated,
Yeah, you said on there that they looked at the site plan.
exactly. And he
So
got
that-
signatures beforehand, and he
went
wasn't
by.
thrilled, but he did it. He went above and beyond. You can see right here. I support the 2 variance requests, and I reviewed the variance package, including the site plan. So
Yeah.
that is what we're suggesting moving forward, just so it's crystal clear when it comes before you.
And I think it's really important to do based on, the other greenhouse situation. I mean, you have to take a snapshot in time, and that's what those letters of support or opposition are really important. So I think we need to know exactly what they looked at.
How long does the packet have to be on the website before the meeting?
At least 24 hours.
Okay.
So we usually do it on Friday.
Yeah.
Friday, everything is done pretty much. Yeah.
Well, how long does the sign have to be up in front of the property?
I think
21
that's
days.
2 weeks or 3 weeks.
It's 21 days.
Yeah, 21
Yeah.
days, 3
Mhm.
weeks.
So the language here then, are we talking about putting a deadline on that? Like a
Yeah, do you like the week?
7-day, 10-day?
I
prior?
thought a
don't
week was
know.
enough time for them to address comments that the DRB had then. I like that.
I mean, as long as we see it whenever we get the packet,
Yeah,
and then,
that's usually been the case. I mean, we have even let them print it and bring it to the meeting because the site plan, whenever they make changes, it's always improved than gotten worse. So, we have let them do it, but, we can work on the policy.
With the revised site plan, I mean, the DRB makes their comments, but I mean, in revising the site plan, they don't really have any recommendations to the site plan as much as the aesthetics.
Well, Vaughn
right?
Lake, which was 3 months ago, the DRB recommended a reduction into the 75-foot impervious setback.
Right.
So they submitted a revised plan that was like 300 square feet less.
They
And so-
have,
But that
many
was a
times there
situation.
was like a pool and a cabana and they was taking up a lot of
Right,
space
right.
and they said, we don't need a cabana. I think the cabana is taking too much. Take it away. And people have actually made changes based on that.
Right, but I mean, it wouldn't need to go back to them for.
No, it doesn't go back to
comments,
them
right?
ever.
Yeah.
Right.
So it would just be something that gives y'all an opportunity to take a look at it, give
Yep.
feedback before it comes to us.
I think as long as whatever you send us beforehand, if it could not change between that time and us seeing it here,
Right.
because if we pull up the packet and it's
Mhm.
different and we've already
Right.
thought about it for, I don't know, 3 or 4 days beforehand, then
Yeah, could it be that once it's sent to us, that's what it is?
yeah, that's the date.
Yeah. I don't necessarily think it has to be a week, but
Right.
once we get it.
Well, but you've got these letters, right, from property owners that,
Well, no, just the
Yeah.
site plan.
oh,
I would just say
just-
this, because the packets are pretty extensive. I think I want that extra 2 days
yeah,
as staff.
that's
I
fine.
prefer the week, just so I could update the staff reports, have everything fine tuned.
And the thing is, if there's a major revision to a site plan, we need to make sure that the applicant has enough time to go talk to
Mhm.
those people that are in support, or if there was someone that was not in support, that they were able to fix through the revisions to have time to go get their signatures or their emails. The other thing that I think would be helpful is prior to the design review board meeting, if staff could just let the applicant know that if there's any changes that are requested, that they'll have that week time frame, so that if they're working with an engineer or a pool designer, that they know they've got that window right there that making changes, let's go ahead and make them so that we can still hit the next meeting that's on the
Absolutely.
schedule, rather than have to defer it because we missed it by a day or two.
Let me
Anything
throw
else?
something in there just to,
Yeah.
something to think about is in looking at the revised version or updated version, one is to what level are we going to consider a comment or a request for a change in the DRB? If they, we gotta look, do they say it might look better if they did this? Is that a request for a change versus we want you, I don't recall, again, I don't sit regularly with the DRB, so I don't know exactly how they word some of their decisions or how they vote on them. Something to think about as we kind of work through how the policy is actually worded And then if you have any thoughts on this, I'm just throwing it out there so the comments get made so we can work on it on this end. And then the other one is, I know someone had mentioned, or maybe Hodge mentioned, what if it was a comment from the public that they responded to, but the DRB didn't mention it?
Yeah, what if it, instead of requested, you used recommended, and then they need to recommend it?
Yeah, they nowadays, they actually do recommend, like collectively at the end of the case, the discussion, public discussion, they do make a recommendations specifically.
So in your case, if the DRB didn't recommend additional landscaping, but I'm the homeowner, I want to screen it more, is that the example you're kind of going for?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you say this specifically requested by the DRB, but just say specifically recommended by the DRB, then they would make the recommendation for the change.
Yeah,
Would that clear it up?
I think if their ultimate decision is the DRB recommends the following, and this says if the change is as a result of the recommendations, that will solve that issue. The thing that I would raise is, what if it wasn't a change that was specifically included in the DRB recommendation, but someone from the public asked for it?
And they did it, then we would want them to meet a timetable.
And that's fine.
Right. Give some subjectivity to us to make that determination. Right.
Yeah, we can work
Like
on
a
it.
week or whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
We, the only thing is that they really go, like it takes 2 months for them to get any kind of variance. So we don't want, for a minor issue, we don't want them to suffer another month to go back to drawing board or anything. So that's why we are much more, we feel like they should come to you and you can make that determination if they should be, if the case should be deferred or not us, like the staff. That's my just opinion, You guys have more power to decide if that site plan is, acceptable or not, and go back and make another site plan for the next meeting. Or
So
Bob, you have anything to say?
We had some case in the middle. I could reach out to the chair or vice and just say, hey, what do you think? In situations that are kind of in the middle, but
Right.
Yeah.
We're slipping it in.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty common. It's just a matter of picking which day, what's practical for you, what's practical for staff, and what's reasonable for the
I
applicant.
agree with Michael on this one, because if we get the site plan a week before the meeting, we actually have time to record it and make changes to the staff report. Because once we have written everything and then they make a change in site plan, and it's very hard to quickly, we are rambling over there. So I do prefer a week, but many times, it's
Can I just check to make sure we're on the same page? And I don't see that, but I thought it said a week after the DRB, and you just said a week before.
yeah, that's the same, because the DRB is always 2 weeks before
That is the-
BZA. Yeah.
Okay.
If it's something that's legally advertised with the newspaper, right, we have to do legal advertisement, say the setback changes on the site plan. If they change the setback and the legal advertisement went out already, then I think they need to go back and re-advertise.
If they need a greater variance, we would have to re-advertise.
Re-advertise.
If they reduce the amount of reduce the amount of variance that they needed,
Then it's okay.
then it's okay to go
Right. I'm
forward.
just saying, if for some reason, if they change it and it affects the advertising, then there's no
That would-
doubt. Then
yeah,
we
that would
have to go back and
automatically-
advertise.
They would have to want it
They'd
because we
have to
couldn't
want
give it to them.
Right.
Right,
Okay.
that's all. Otherwise, I think everything is good. Great idea.
So can I make a motion to adjourn?
You absolutely can.
I'd like to make a
Second.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.
Motion from David to adjourn and a second from Laura. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously.